you die.
At the beginning of the series, a team of Navy SEALs, including Lieutenant Commander James Reece, are on a mission to capture a Syrian weapons expert, Dr. Kahani, supported by SDF troops. The compound is expected to be lightly guarded, so the strike team infiltrates through a crypt running below. The team advances into the crypt cautiously.
Macron, Fletcher, maintain comms.
When their dog picks up something. James scans the surrounding area, only to realize the entire crypt is rigged to blow. Suddenly, the SDF troops outside begin to take fire. The team moves to provide backup when they are ambushed and 2 SEALs are killed instantly by a machine gunner. James hits him with a frag before they gun him down, but they are forced to retreat back into the crypt. And 2 other teammates are hit in the gun battle. They need their QRF right now, so Navy SEAL Boozer finds a hatch leading to the surface and gets as close as possible to call for backup. The Tangos keep pushing, and one SDF soldier starts having a panic attack and hits the tripwire, blowing the entire crypt. Ben and Boozer survive, while their fellow SEAL Cortez is severely injured. Their QRF finally shows and brings them outside where troops are laying down gunfire. A chopper soon lands, and James refuses to leave without his men, only to learn they are all that's left, before boarding the chopper and taking off, trying to save Cortez, but he eventually dies. Following the incident, James is interviewed by NCS regarding the mission and learns there was no trace of Kahani at the compound. The agents reveal they have evidence that his fellow SEAL Donnie had a mental break and tripped the wire, even playing an audio recording of James telling Donnie to calm down.
Donnie needs help.
But James clearly remembers the SDF trooper setting off the bomb and has no memory of saying those words to Donnie. The agents play the audio again,
Calm down, Donnie. Calm down.
causing James to question himself and what really happened. After a medical checkup, the doctor suggests they do an MRI as his head injury could result in memory loss, but James wants to be home where his men are. James and Boozer hit a bar. James plans to hunt Kahani and scalp him as revenge for his men, and Boozer is on board. A woman then enters the bar and interrupts their conversation, revealing herself to be news reporter Katie Buranek, who heard rumors about 12 SEALs heading out and only 1 coming home. She thinks the military is hiding something as no statement was issued, but James tells her neither he nor Boozer will talk to her. She asks who Boozer is, and James looks over to see the seat empty. James and Boozer fly back to the U.S. James is at the air base in Cali when his good friend, former Navy SEAL turned CIA agent Ben Reece, comes to pick him up. They take the scenic route to clear James's head, where Ben asks him about the mission. James is certain it was a setup by someone with the capability to alter voices and digital records. Ben thinks that would be nearly impossible, but promises to make some calls. James returns home to Lauren and his daughter Lucy. Lucy shows him a drawing she made of their family before they tuck her into bed. Lauren is worried about his head injury and suggests he gets it checked out as soon as possible. He tries to sleep, but his men keep flashing across his mind. The next day, Lauren and Lucy are telling James about the day they have planned for him. He pulls a tin of freshly baked cinnamon rolls from the oven, but about a minute later he forgets it's hot and holds it with his bare hands, burning him. He then gets a call and rushes over to Boozer's apartment, where Boozer was found dead. He barges into the home, ignoring the NCS agents, to see blood splatter all over the walls. James swears Boozer was fine when they flew in yesterday, but the agents reveal Boozer flew in 2 days ago by himself. Then later that night he ended himself and was just found this morning. James is called in to be debriefed by Admiral Pillar and his Captain Howard, standing by his point that they were set up and their digital records were manipulated. Pillar is skeptical, thinking maybe his injury is affecting his memory of the events. Despite this, he knows Reece is one of the best they have and wants him to get himself fixed. Outside, he learns that Boozer shot himself with his SIG, their team pistol, but that doesn't sit right with him. Later, he and Ben are on Ben's boat. He knows Boozer's favorite pistol was his .45 and that he hated carrying around his SIG, and if he wanted things to end, his .45 would be the pick. Whoever set them up can fake evidence, but they cannot fake his friend. Ben is skeptical, thinking it may be a stretch, causing James to question his sanity. Ben thinks he is just tired, offering James's boat to take his family for a trip. He reassures James they are still brothers, and if anything happens, to give him a call. That night, James looks into Katie and sends her an email asking if he was alone in the bar. He later attends the funeral of his fallen SEALs, all issued silver stars for their bravery. After the service, James meets Secretary of Defense Lorraine Hartley, who promises to do what she can to help the families, and wants to award him the Navy Cross for his bravery on the operation. She will be deploying SEALs to track Kahani as they have a lead, and James wants in, but she refuses, telling him to rest. As James and Lauren drive home, she asks him about the MRI appointment, but James is focused on a suspicious car that seems to be tailing him. They get home and are parked in the driveway when James notices the same car parked a distance from their home. He tells Lauren to head inside before approaching the car with his gun ready, only to find Katie behind the wheel. Inside, she shows him Boozer's death certificate, confirming he was officially declared dead in America before they met in the bar. She is concerned about how exhaustion and lack of downtime played a part in the loss of his team, but James asks her to leave. James stares at the death certificate, realizing he's more gone than he thought. He locks his gun inside a safe before explaining to Lauren that he needs help. He goes to a doctor that same night and does the MRI, the sound of the machine triggering a flashback where he finally remembers Donnie being the one to trigger the explosive. The test ends, but when James is pulled from the machine, he comes face to face with two masked armed men. They prepare to execute him, but James fights back. He disarms and kills one man while the other escapes, only for James to realize the gun he is holding is his own. Fearing for Lauren and Lucy, James races home, leaving a message for Lauren. He then calls 911 requesting units to his home. He gets home and heads inside prepared for trouble, only to stumble upon Lauren and Lucy dead on the kitchen floor. James breaks, screaming in anger and terror over their bodies. After the funeral service for his family, James sits around a fire with his close friends, Ben, Marco del Toro from Mexico, and former Army pilot Elizabeth Riley, talking about their better days. Soon, James decides to call it a night and head home, where he sits staring at his family's blood splatter. The following day, 2 NCS agents visit him, including Agent James Holder assigned to his case. He asks to see the gun safe in his bedroom, which has a highly sophisticated lock. James has a less secure one in his garage, and Holder keeps insisting that maybe the gun was locked in this safe. James tells him they missed it with Boozer and should be kicking in doors looking for his killer, but Holder reminds him they have a process to follow. James goes back to speak with Pillar and Commander Cox, certain that his family's death should be handled as counterintelligence instead of a criminal investigation, as what has happened is personal. Kahani knows James is capable of stopping him. That's why he sent a kill squad after him, but Pillar doubts Kahani has the reach to operate on U.S. soil. He then speaks honestly, telling James he is putting them in a difficult position, as his cognitive ability cannot be trusted. As Pillar speaks, James loses it, grabbing him by the neck until he is ordered to stand down. Katie meets Holder, offering to give him a witness statement that James waved a gun in her face if he gives her details on what happened at the clinic. Holder walks her through the crime scene, and they try to put together the timeline of events. The agency has no evidence of James killing any masked assailants, as there was no body nor blood when he arrived on scene. All the bullets they pulled from the scene matched James's gun, and there was no camera footage, so either they're looking at a powerful enemy or James is going crazy and killed his family. Katie visits James that night. She tells him there was no sign he was attacked at the clinic, and he will need help proving his innocence. She offers to show him Boozer's police report if he signs a medical release allowing her to pull his MRI scan, so James accepts. They will stay in contact, so James gives her a Faraday bag to put her phone in, gives her a prepaid cell phone, and instructs her to set up an account on a secure portal named Threema where they can talk. James starts looking into Holder, recalling Katie mentioning that he was first on the scene. He blocks out Holder's face with his fingers, and his eyes look exactly like one of his attackers. The revelation triggers James, and he writes Holder's name on the back of Lucy's drawing, starting his terminal list. James starts tailing Holder, then goes to see Ben in the middle of the night with a file he gathered. He suspects Holder is Kahani's Kood's force guy on the ground, as he was first on scene for both his and Boozer's cases, and even beat the EMTs to the MRI clinic. Ben asks if he is certain, but James looked him dead in the eyes and knows he is the one. James gains access to Holder's building posing as an interested renter, but he is there to gather surveillance. He takes a photo of a lock to the rooms and later practices picking one just like it. Holder leaves his building, and Ben follows him to keep an eye on him. Meanwhile, James breaks into the apartment complex and picks the lock to Holder's room. He scans the apartment, plants a bug onto Holder's laptop, then greases his door hinges for his next visit. James gets a call and meets with Hartley inside a bar. There, she tells him Kahani is no longer a threat, and he sees the news break that he was killed in a military operation. He thinks he has no leads until Ben reveals that Holder pulled James's biometrics 2 days before his family was killed. James now only needs to confirm the knife wound he gave his attacker during their fight. Katie gets James's MRI results, then calls her editor Jordan, asking him to find her a neurologist. That night, James infiltrates Holder's building while he is at home. He breaks into his apartment to find him sleeping in bed and takes his gun. He then wakes a scared Holder, telling him they messed up when they killed Boozer with the wrong gun. Holder swears he didn't kill anyone, so James demands to see his arms. There is no wound on Holder's arms, but James is certain he helped cover it up. He demands to know who he works for, but Holder starts to cry. He reminds James he is a federal agent, so James wonders why he was first on the scene when he dialed 911. James binds his arms and prepares to kill him when Holder says the name Saul Agnon, the man who paid him. He tries attacking, but James shoots him dead before setting the scene to look like he ended himself. James adds Saul's name to the list and finds out he is the VP of Capstone Industries. He then gathers some cash, guns, and ammo and loads them into his truck. Katie gets the doctor's reading and shows it to Jordan, and they plan to break news soon about negligence in the military regarding their operators' medicals. James meets Katie in a restaurant, telling her about Saul Agnon, suspecting he is involved, rolling back on his previous theory about Kahani. She wants to know the source, but he refuses to say. She then shows him his MRI results, revealing he has a tumor inside his brain, which could explain his headaches and paranoia. James then notices an operator following them and rushes her out the back, suspecting he is being tracked by a drone, but Katie saw no one and thinks he is just paranoid. They jump in his truck, and when the man starts following in his car, James reverses into his car. The man opens fire at James, who kills him before taking a file from his car with a target package on James, and Katie realizes he is telling the truth. Katie wants to tell the cops, but James isn't sure how deep their enemies run and thinks they need to get off-grid. He gives her a gun and warns her to lay low, but Katie wants to help, promising to find a connection between his men and Capstone if there is one. We then see Capstone's CEO Steve Horn training with his bodyguards from Talos Security during their lunch break. He returns to his office when Saul meets with him, telling him their man is dead and Reece has disappeared, and is worried that his link with Holder will be revealed, but Steve plans to handle it. James gets himself a motel room, and Ben comes to visit. He has ID'd James's attacker as Adrian Gordonis, former Marine Special Forces and private security for Talos. James wants him to gather more intel on Saul, as he has Katie working on Capstone. Ben is worried that Katie may blow his entire operation, and that him being CIA would cause issues, but James reassures him she is an asset. Saul attends a golf tournament, where he meets with Nibellum Pharmaceuticals CEO Mike Tedesco with plans to sell the company. Saul manages to convince the client to attend a party at a house he rented nearby, and Ben is already scoping the building out. At the party, the client decides to talk to his acquisitions team, so Saul instantly calls off the party. Later, he is alone inside the house. He goes to take a shower, and James breaks into the apartment. Saul hears his stereo turn on from the bathroom and steps out, confused. James appears behind him, bags his head, and binds his arms until he passes out. He later wakes to see James standing before him and throws up, scared out of his mind. James demands to know why Capstone wants him dead, but Saul initially denies knowing anything. James promises him he doesn't want to die for somebody else's actions, so Saul tells him about Steve Horn. James gives him a sip of vodka to calm him down and learns that Steve only uses him to clean up messes. He only knows what Steve wants him to know, but explains it's all related to a project, RD 4895. James then demands to know who he sent to kill his family, and Saul reveals he contacted a lawyer, Marcus Boykin, who hired sicarios. James then injects Saul with a methadone cocktail, telling him a quiet death is more than he deserves. James then sends the project number to Katie, who is working on piecing the puzzle together. James treks up a mountain in the Wyoming backcountry, a vision of Lucy accompanying him, which soon disappears when he reaches the top. He sets up his sniper rifle. Meanwhile, Boykin heads out for another day of work. As he comes into view, James fires one shot, which hits, and watches his car flip. He descends the mountain and finds Boykin still barely alive and downloads his cell phone data. James meets Riley at a private hangar with plans to go to Mexico, warning her that she should bail after dropping him off, but she reminds him Lucy was her goddaughter and plans to come with him. An FBI task force is soon created to capture James, led by Tony Leon, and they start working on finding out who was in the car with him during the daylight shootout. Katie has made a breakthrough. She has linked 27 companies to RD 4895, most with government connections, and plans to find out more, sending her contact the info she has. She then hears banging at the front door and grabs her gun, but it turns out to be her brother and his family, who have returned home. They are surprised to see her, thinking she was still in Syria, but she tells them they may have missed her email and goes to hide her gun. Steve meets with the board of his subsidiary Nibelum. They are facing an issue as Hartley has drafted plans to make cuts in every military sector, which is affecting their recent sale, as their client now views them as a risky investment. He reassures them he has everything under control, but Mike and the others no longer trust his judgment after Saul was found dead. He is no longer interested in a sale if there are no returns, nor working on his projects if there isn't a market. James is nearing his destination, finding his hand shaking uncontrollably. They land and are picked up by Marco, who brings them back to his villa. Hartley is visited by Senator Pryor, who reveals someone got to 2 committee members who have now changed their minds on her new budget. He suggests she revise it, but Hartley wants to create change in the military, focusing on their operators' mental health, using James as an example. She decides to make the hearing public, putting those senators in the spotlight. James messages Katie for an update, and she thinks others in his platoon may have had tumors also, but is still chasing leads. James wakes the next morning with a splitting headache and steps out to see Ben sitting with Riley and Marco, who reveals his contact has found his family's killer. Katie is heading out when she is confronted by Tony and his agents, who want to talk. He demands to know James's location, as he is wanted for murder. Katie thinks the true story is Saul and Capstone giving a platoon of SEALs brain tumors, but learns that Saul is dead along with Holder. He understands she wants her story, but asks her to consider the lives lost and the charges she could face. Katie folds, promising to let him know when she finds out, and takes his card. Hartley's personal assistant, Richard, is leaving the office when Steve shows up to talk. Turns out they both had a deal for Richard to pass him information, but Steve is changing the deal to protect his investment. He needs Pryor. Richard explains that Pryor is the one pushing the budget, but Steve doesn't want him turned. He needs a face-to-face. James learns the name Navajaz, a contract killer and gang leader who recently returned to Mexico with a knife injury on his forearm. He trains up to 12 young sicarios out of a facility, and Marco's contact suggests a good vantage point for a sniper shot, but James wants to make contact and hit him head-on. Ben calls him aside. He understands James wants to bleed this guy, but urges him to focus on the bigger picture, Steve Horn. James recalls how seeing his family dead made him feel, and bigger picture or not, he wants blood. Ben agrees. He wants them two to head in alone, but Marco sees the chance to wipe Navas off the map and wants in with his men. Reece tries to explain the plan, but ends up collapsing. Marco calls in a doctor, who explains his tumor is fast-growing, but if he gets an operation, he could be back on his feet within 9 months. James asks for other options and learns about drugs that could reduce the symptoms. Everyone now knows of his tumor. Ben, however, just wants to know if he is still able to operate. Marco offers to have his men deal with it, but James wants to look Navajaz in the eyes, and they respect that. The following day, James, Ben, and Marco infiltrate Navajaz's facility. They lure the first 4 sicarios into a kill box and take them out easily. The facility is now alerted, so James and Marco push the building while Ben drops anyone trying to escape. They regroup and push another room where sicarios are holding civilians at gunpoint, but James and Ben kill them expertly. Ben and James keep moving until they spot Navas trying to escape in a car, but lay down gunfire, causing him to take off on foot. Ben takes a round but tells James to push on, as he is fine. James then corners Navas inside the building, dropping him with 2 shots before knocking him out. He drags Navas into another building, tying him up with chains. He ensures Navas remembers him before using a hatchet to disembowel him, tying his intestines above his head, then letting him go, ordering him to walk, but Navas doesn't take a step before collapsing. Katie learns about Nebellum and the drugs they've been prescribing to all 6 branches, and that they are days away from being acquired for over $70 billion. Katie packs her things and leaves her brother's home, unaware the FBI is tailing her. Ben gives James a file on Horn, urging Riley to keep an eye on James, as he will not be flying with them. James then gifts Marco his father's rifle before saying goodbye to the family and taking off. Thanks for watching. If you had a good time, go ahead and hit that like button, drop a comment, and of course, subscribe for more recaps just like this. And hey, don't click away just yet. YouTube thinks you'll love one of these 2 videos popping up right here, so check them out now.